matter of weeks, I'll be graduating high school, and so while I'm not exactly an expert on the topic, today I'd like to talk about a few ways that I think we could improve the education system here in the US, after having been enrolled in it for the last 13 years of my life in a number of different schools. So just for some background context, the current education system was largely established in around the late 1700s, yeah, that long ago, surrounding the Industrial Revolution and the so-called Enlightenment. Its key feature is the current grading system of quantitative evaluation, and it was designed to categorize students as either smart or not smart. There would be those who run the factories and the companies, and then there'd be those who work in the factories. That's why students are evaluated with letter grades in order to determine how they stack up against that predetermined status quo. The view that many have towards education is that it's in order to prepare students for getting a job in the future, which is fine, except with that approach, mainstream K-12 education is basically just a generalized trade school in order to prepare students for finding their place in the future economy, which, by the way, we can't even predict what that'll look like in 10 days from now, let alone in 13 years. So, thus, I think the Obama-endorsed STEM education, an education centered around science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, would only add to the problems that the system has right now. Now, obviously, those are important fields that should definitely be studied and pursued, but if the centerpiece to a curriculum is the goal of having students graduate with the equivalent of a 2-year technical degree so they can be career ready at 18, would severely hinder students' development. STEM, and the current system for that matter, both only emphasize what developmental psychologist Howard Gardner calls logical mathematical intelligence, which is only one of 9 identified types of intelligences, the other 8 of which largely get swept under the table and neglected in common curriculum. Anyway, this very linear approach encourages students, parents, and even teachers sometimes to focus more on just getting as many A's as possible at all costs. Now, don't lie, we've all read Spark Notes instead of doing the English reading, or just copied down the answers from the back of the math book and said, call it a day. Like, that's what I spent my free period this morning doing. But the point is, the focus of education goes to the results, and the process is neglected. This is one of the reasons a lot of students lose interest in school altogether and even drop out, because they know that these highly coveted results, that's the only reason that they're working for them, aren't even going to matter since they know they can't financially afford to go to college, so they're not even getting a worthwhile high school experience. In addition, modern psychology has proven time and time again that temporary success, such as an A on a test or even in a class, won't lead to lasting happiness, and that any joy involved in achieving a goal will come in the steps taken towards that goal and will not last very long after the goal is achieved. As Shakespeare put it in Troilus and Cressida, things won are done, joy's soul lies in the doing. So by forcing students to learn just for the sake of the grade, they'll naturally associate learning with not as much pleasure as they could if we focused more on the process of obtaining that goal rather than the goal itself. It's also a pretty basic psychological and philosophical principle that the external world is merely a reflection and projection of one's internal selective self. So what mainstream education is trying to do is teach people about the external world and the history and science and mathematics behind it, while hardly ever addressing the internal and spiritual self, which is basically like trying to study film by studying the screen in the movie theater rather than the content of what is being put into that projector onto that screen. You're not going to get very far doing that. Anyway, so what would I change? What do I think we should change? First, I think we should reevaluate the process by which courses and textbooks are approved. There are so many hoops to jump through for approval, and the goal behind that is to have education be standardized, both in the material being taught and how students learn that material. If we want to make the world a better place, new ideas have to be able to flourish, and making education more personalized and research-based rather than the memorize the standard material, spit it back out on a test, rinse, repeat, is a great place to start. With that, we can implement a lot of what's often referred to as 21st century learning, which aims to guide students to be literate in a wide range of fields, and most importantly, to think critically. This will not only help students in their professional lives, but also in personal lives, with their relationships, and in political participation. If students are truly taught to think critically and outside the box, they'll be better prepared to make good choices and formulate their own opinions of the future. Lastly, I think we we should replace the current quantitative grades with a much more comprehensive, instructor-made academic portfolios that would put the focus back on the process and off the results. This would not just teach students how to complete human doings, rather guide students to find what they find worth doing as human beings. And that, my friends, is the revolution, and it's time we start learning about that. Thank you.